movie. But I just spent so long going through my book collection looking for the book versions I thought I had of this. That I used to have. I had a small paperback and a large paperback version. And I had a biography of James Dickey, the author of the book. I can't find any of that stuff. Did I get rid of that? I was deranged. I don't think I can ever forgive my past self for getting rid of all those books I had. What was wrong with me? Should have gotten like a storage unit. A bigger one, I mean. Twice the size. But, I had limited people to move the book collection. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, except for the very first phase of it, it really is a refinement. There was a brief part of the purge, the worst beginning part, where I was like, I'm probably just going to get rid of all of these books. I want to be light and free and own nothing. And I just let people come over and just raid the collection. A couple of friends anyway, a few people. And that was a huge mistake. Also, what I kind of wasn't, the collection is better now. I mean, not everywhere, but it's still a really good collection, and it's more refined. And I got rid of things for a lot of reasons. One was like, I don't like how it looks aesthetically. How this O.J. Simpson spine book stayed around. I'm like, that bothered me. There's a reason though, it's down out of the way. I want some creepy killer staring out of my bookcase every time. That Ryan Murphy series though, American Crime Story, it's so good and it's so well written and it's based on that book. Which really makes the good case that O.J. was guilty as an individual actor, but that LA's racism of its police especially was really put on trial as well. Like somehow the prosecution and the defense were right about different things. Anyways, been watching Deliverance. It's aged pretty well. 70s movies are often really smart movies. I really like them. So, the best of them, Pretty involving, crazy movie. With a lot to say. It makes me think about reservoirs too, which, I canoed around Lake Powell for 7 months long ago. It's a subject dear to me. It's very interesting, and tragic. It's this story. But all right, more books about New Mexico. What is this channel? It's somebody going through an entire book collection. Along the way, I'm reading a whole paperback bookcase as well. Probably take me the rest of my life. This is like one of my favorite bookcases right here. I love the writing bookcase. Oh, it's so good. And it's totally shelf maxed to the max too. Look at that. And the books are brought forward. It's just a great look. I love it. I want to make this bookcase into a poster. Maybe even with all the wild stuff on top of it. Functional pencil sharpener. Pictures-free piles can be kind of cool sometimes. This little hanging piece of wall art got a glow up. It had rips on it, but now they're all covered in stars. Terrible environmental advice, by the way, Emerson. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. This used to hang in my older sister Leanne's youthful bedroom and was surrounded by unicorn statues. I've since read Emerson and love Emerson. But good life advice, right? But stay on the trail when you're in the wilderness. Symbolizes that I'm willing to rip up old images of myself. Will be an element in a photograph that will be part of a book cover I'm dreaming for. My book is so weird that I'm going to have to make a proof of concept, like a whole print run, like a print on demand thing, because it's not up for to be edited and changed. It's too elaborate. And so I may have to sell it visually in that way to its possible distributors and so on. And I just want to see it. Purity of heart is to will one thing, as Kierkegaard said. And that's the back cover summary. I love it. Short and sweet. Of course, the spine. Mo, I think we need to have a meeting about your attitude. Apartment meeting. Everybody, Prismo's attitude. Gather. Squirrel. Squirrel. Sweet Pea. We're talking about Prismo's attitude out here. Come on. You're the ones that brought this up. Oh, it's fine. Just do whatever. Your attitude's great. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. Shh. 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 Never change, Prismo. Never change. You're amazing and everyone loves you. I was just joking. I was kidding. I was doing a bit. Hey, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I love you. Your attitude's great. You're a beacon of hope. All right, let's look at some gosh darn books about New Mexico. But why, you say? I don't live in New Mexico. I live elsewhere in the world. Because fun fact, and I realize this, I've learned this in my studies, that's why I'm a scholar. Most of the world is not New Mexico. Only the New Mexico part is New Mexico. That's pretty small. There's the world. A whole lot of it. There's New Mexico. Here, this little postage stamp. In that crater. Hopefully somebody that doesn't have an eerie residence. Why did I say that? Okay. Well, here's your grandma. Great-great-grandma. Okay, let's do this. Books galore. Look at these. Yep, we did. Sure thing, huh? Yep, you were there maybe. Did we look at these? You betcha. You looked at these. They were on a different shelf at the time. That was fun. Things were different back then. I don't think we looked at anything beyond right here. I think this is it. This is what we're looking at next, so. All the letters people have sent, all the call-ins, the voicemails, just the people on the street stopping me saying, what's next on the New Mexico shelf? It's all led to this, and I couldn't tell you back then because I protect the integrity of this channel. I don't want to spoil things like that for people, But I'm going to tell you now, we're going to look at these books right here. As I like to call them, the next New Mexico books on the top shelf that we already started looking at. Mysterious photo. Could that geoguesser rainbow guy find this? Anyone has that guy's ear, challenge him. The thing about New Mexico is it's actually central to the whole human experience and to life on Earth. I mean, it's a major waypoint in the migration of peoples across the planet. Skeletons were found near Clovis, New Mexico, now called the Clovis people, formerly called Clovis man. And the DNA from the bones retrieved at that site have been connected. They're the same. They're the ancestors of 80% of the indigenous peoples of all the Americas. I mean, back in the day, Chaco Canyon was the center of a vast trading empire where shells from Alaska and macaw feathers from way down in South America were found. There were huge trading networks. Cocopelli, that famous iconic image, was a trader with a pack on his back and a flute to attract customers, probably. In some early versions, the flute is also a detachable penis. I wrote an article about the dark side of Cocopelli once. Now, here's something. Here's something not in everybody's book collection. I got a lot of those books that everybody has, Do I have a Penguin edition of East of Eden? Probably, something like that. Dune. Worst Hard Time. There's lots of books like that. Just things you see in collections. I used to joke, I've never read it, but everybody I know owns Their Eyes Were Watching God. I guess I need to read that. I do need to read that. But Death House Letters of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. This book is an artifact, I'm realizing, and should be in the antique bookcase. I'm moving it. This is the letters of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. These were the famous spies who stole atomic bomb secrets and gave them to the Russians with the justification that they thought no one country should have the right to such a powerful weapon because they would inevitably use it. They did it for the theory of mutually assured destruction. But they are significant here in town. My podcast once interviewed the New Yorker writer Rachel Syme. More people should listen to that. That's kind of an undiscovered episode we did. She's a really interesting writer who once wrote a really good article about Breaking Bad in Albuquerque, really emphasizing the relationship between the two. But her parents are pretty well off today, I believe, because they live in a super fancy part of town up in the mountains. Because in part, the ancestors on one side of her family were involved as lawyers of the Rosenberg trial. I think it was her dad's grandparents. They were literally the lawyers for them. And not too long ago, some friends got married, and they got married in the Rosenberg house where all the espionage went down. Anyway, Death House Letters is a great title. I used it in my book essay of all book titles. There's a video on that if you want to hear it. I literally read it. It's kind of, what am I looking at here? Robert and Michael Rosenberg. They just put a picture of their kids on the back. That's hilarious. Look at this. They have permitted the editing of letters written to each other and to their attorney for the purpose of establishing a fund for their sons, Michael, 10, and Robert, 6. These letters are a candid expression of their beliefs and their emotions, a moving record of their love and faith that have found sustenance even in the separate cells of Sing Sing's death house. You're in Sing Sing. Where's Sing Sing? Lansing? It's a famous prison, right? But I don't know where it is. The Rosenbergs have steadfastly maintained their innocence? Oh. You know, this is crazy because this is from during their trials. Any of you out there like collectors of this kind of stuff? Make me an offer on this. I could always use a cash surprise via PayPal. Sadly, today I just found that I can't start this CNM Community School Alternative Licensure Program until the beginning of the year. I didn't sign up for the right thing. I signed up for this regular teaching class, and this class didn't take into account, program didn't take into account that I had a master's degree already. But the good news is that I only have to take 4 classes, and that's way less than I thought because I have a master's. That's like cool. That's cool. I can do that in like a year or something. So even though I can't start right away, it's like it's going to be over like probably sooner than I thought. And I'm going to use this time to queue up a good teaching gig somewhere in town. I'll suffer and be a middle school or high school teacher for a little bit, you know, until my book hits. I'll just have a reliable income stream. I'm giving it to the man a little, but it's tiring being Bukowski all the time and scraping by on the edge of the economic world. I don't know. Part of me is like, how could this be any good? Maybe it'd be interesting. 1953. Like, don't you think they're just like covering their tracks a little bit? If they're still claiming innocence at this point, they're gonna be like, and then we didn't do anything. I was gonna do a big Oppenheimer read of all my Oppenheimer books before that movie came out. But life got away from me, and I barely ended up seeing it in the theaters while it was still in the theaters. I thought it was all right. Not my favorite Nolan. That would be Interstellar. I don't know. Movies like that just can't help but partake in the myth of empire. Same with Dunkirk, his World War II one. I'm like, these will never be my favorites. These are going to get united and called Sir or something if you know already. I don't like the bookstores do that. They always have excuses. You have to rip the covers off so people don't sell them back. They don't care. You're doing something wrong. You're strangling puppies in a ditch. This looks very interesting. Why is this in the New Mexico section? Is it in a Army life in a black regiment? South Carolina coast. Okay, this is in the wrong section. But it looks cool. There were African-American soldiers and cowboys and all. Like, the African-American history of the West has been very much neglected and turned down. Like 1/4 of cowboys were black. Seriously. That's the stat. Maybe in one sense they figured something out, you know. Get out of the South and even the Northeast and strike out, but there was still racism in the West, of course. So it was a strange and interesting, what was I going to say? I don't know. Man, my job is like a psychological experiment. I'm pretty sure I'm like in some sort of CIA experiment that like every time I answer the phone, it rings again. Being a front desk secretary is crazy. It demands real fortitude and it drives you insane. You know, I always wanted this to be more readable, like I could just sit down and read it, but I don't know about that. It is a useful reference, though, and I've quoted it a time or two. There's one term in particular, I can't remember what, that I thought it was great for. Yeah, New Mexico and Colorado have their own dialects of Spanish. Also, what's going on with the cover here? How do I do this on my book? I love that. You know, it's like having a friend. Is it? I agree, okay. Let's see, let's just open one at random. Like in Albuquerque in Spanish, luminarias, you know, are those paper bags full of sand. In northern New Mexico, they call them farolitos. Little things like that. Carnerito, name of a game in which 2 children take turns at hitting each other's knuckles until one of the 2 gives up. Oh, we called that quarters. We flick quarters at each other. I don't think we ever knew we were playing a derivative of some previously established game in the same state. Carnero, ram, Spanish diminutive. Huh. That's cool. Oh yeah, of course, a Corolla, a plate, a kind of saddle blanket used on donkeys and mules. Yeah, that's cool to know, actually. I bet this actually would be interesting. It'd be like reading a really avant-garde novel if you read it from cover to cover. It's a very narrow range it covers. Look at that. Mexico and Colorado. I lived in all 4 of the 4 corner states. People not from here are like, what does that mean? It's where 4 states all touch at one point, and they're the western desert states. Lived in Arizona a bunch. Lived in Colorado once. I've traveled and been there. Lived in, where else? New Mexico most of my life. Lived in Utah at least a couple times. Let's see, Lake Powell. Maybe that was it. Oh no, my sister's backyard that one time. I lived in a tent before one of my big trips and after. And when I lived in Provo. I forgot about that. I was suppressing that. Yeah, long ago in another lifetime, I was part of the independent Mormon film community because I was still a young little twerp in this dumb religion. Okay, sorry, existing Mormons, if you're following me. But watch Alyssa Grenfell on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. Yeah, a movie was made based on my brother's book, and I took part in it. It's very embarrassing. I've never rewatched it. I do still have it somewhere here. There it is. I would say it's a quality film for what it is, however. The faintest praise I can give it is that it really is a good representation of that folk culture. Like, here's Mormon humor. Jeez. Napoleon Dynamite really is Mormon humor. It crossed that boundary. In fact, working on this, Jared Hess, who made Napoleon Dynamite, was still not famous yet. He was making Napoleon Dynamite while he was working as like a film loader on this. He had a really like important but menial job on this movie, and we all loved his short film Palooka and did the Napoleon Dynamite voices. And just from watching that 8 minutes a bunch, and from Jared, it was really funny. I once heard him say to somebody, "I'm going to beat you like a redheaded stepchild in capri pants." Because he didn't like capri pants. And I met Jerusha too, but like she helped get thrift store stuff. That's who he co-wrote Napoleon Dynamite with, his wife. And we shared the success of him getting into Sundance. That was crazy. We're like, yeah. And then when he got distribution, then I think he lost my number. Dang it. But, it was an interesting experience to learn how movies are made, etc. And it's pretty surreal and dark for like a religious movie. Like, spoiler alert, but this hum unites the town. It's like everyone thinks it's like the Taoist hum, like the sacred hum, and they think it's a god or something. A miracle. It's actually this guy who's been kind of tormenting everybody and who burnt down half of the church earlier. It's him dying in this cave he fell into, and the sounds of his moans are echoing out across the land. But it unites everybody, and the guy dies, and everyone's like, woo! Now we're friends. This actress was like Mormon famous. She was on billboards and stuff. She'd been in an adaptation of the most famous Mormon book ever, Charlie. This guy was some random person the director picked out of a trailer. He'd only been in minor roles before, but there was a guy who worked on this movie who was in the Crow sequels. Rosenberg. He was super cool, and I got to know him. And there was also there was this lady who'd been kidnapped like twice by a psychotic family member, and there have been a bunch of documentaries and documentary series about her, and she had a role in this, I think, as the mom of a character. She used to tell us crazy stories about all that. I don't remember what that documentary series is called. It's about this girl that gets kidnapped in Utah twice by the same parent. What was it called? I think there's a documentary and a series, a true crime, like remakes type, dramatizing. Anyway, weird backstory. Why'd I bring that up? Oh yeah, because I lived in Provo during production and post-production for that. My first wife, and it was in like 2 different parts, maybe 3 parts. We lived in Provo. We lived with this really cool friend, Ryan Thompson. Kind of gained some respect for that part of Utah and the rebellion that simmers underneath everything. Like Provo and Orem, Utah have like incredible punk scenes back in the day. That was really my introduction to really loving live punk music. Bands like Birds of Paradise and Player Piano would just put on these raucous, insane shows, and I was like, this is great. Bands like The Used and Lower from Provo, so there is a scene there. Provo is named after a French trapper. While we're talking about Provo. My Mormon ancestors were all over its history back in the day. The Cluffs, others, and my children's ancestors from their granddad's side. This book is so cool. Sorry, this got me going off about all the 4 corner states, and this video is supposed to be about New Mexico. I don't know what these videos are. Probably no one's watching. They're artifacts. Maybe they'll be interesting to someone someday. Like if my book's a hit or something. And if YouTube stops just like burying it in some digital vault, everything I ever put on here. Like there was a while where I could tell I was in the flow of the algorithms. And not like I want these to be big. I'm like, it's an experiment in real minimal posting, you know? Book. It's kind of anti-cinema. Maybe you could think of it as a 3D animated Rothko painting, an endless succession of rectangles. I have figure details in his early paintings. So happy when I found that calendar at the thrift store. I saw it and I went back like a week later. I was like, I can't stop thinking about you, Rothko calendar. It was unopened and new too. Sadly, though, roaches keep hiding in it. Need to get some like hotels. Oh, there's a roach in the water. I just saw it. Tiny little baby one. Drown. It's a dead one that I just killed because he's stupid and I hate him. Prismo. Hi. Prismo, tell us the wisdom that we need to hear. Tell us. Please. Okay. Those that have ears, let them hear. Let Prismo's psychic mind raise into your heart. That's always been the motto of this channel, of course. I don't love that, but it's fine. Is this a sin? Yes or no? What does your religion say? Should a book that much bigger than the books around it be allowed to coexist with them? Yeah, I think aesthetically that's fine. What's up, Prismo? Oh, I love this book. This is the Chronicle of the Coronado Expedition. Say what you will about the Coronado Expedition, that it was bloodthirsty, violent, did not set a good precedent, was put on deserved trial. Sweet Pea, that's so cute. I'm glad you found that box. Oh, I love it. I thought you kiddies were never going to use those boxes, but this is great. In this book is what I believe is the first written description of the Sandias, the mountain range east of Albuquerque that I love. You know, we should all have a mountain range or geological feature that we love, you know. I guess not everyone can live by mountains, but do try to love a mountain in your life. Sometimes a mountain will call to you. One for me is this mountain in northern New Mexico, San Antonio. Every time I see it, I'm like, must go to there. It has a hold on me, a magnetic pull almost. I also feel like I should sacrifice my only son there, but we'll see how that goes. I don't know. Mixed feelings. JK LOL. Yeah, don't joke about that stuff. I wrote a jokey letter to Dear Abby once and I had cops show up to my house because they thought, you know, 90s humor. Okay, this was the late aughts, but still. I wrote, Dear Abby, it was something like this. God keeps telling me to murder my family, but the devil tells me to let them live. I know the devil is the father of all lies, but who should I believe? Anyway, let me tell you who does not think that's funny. Dear Abby. Abby. This is an interesting version of this book because it has Spanish on one side and English on the other. Of course, it has a picture of T.I. What's it say? T.E. Donnelly, this guy I knew who was real swell. Real swell. I put a picture of him in every book. No reason. No, he founded the imprint. Okay. Oh, look, they're trying to, it's like a fancy thing. They're trying to sell series. Look at that, a color insert. See, this shows they can do it. It's not that expensive if you have the will, probably. Maybe it is, I don't know. I just always I like visuals in work. But I've kept my book I've been working on for 15 years intentionally all black and white so it can be reproduced as cheaply as possible. Oh, is this store still there? I heard it was up for sale. Someone should buy that. Oh no, this is something else. Secondhand treasures. Corrales. Did I go to the thrift store in Corrales? I must have. But I bought this online from an online dealer. I think I bought it from Alibris back before Amazon bought that. Black Range Tales. This is kind of a famous one for a mountain range of New Mexico. 1936, a classic of Americana. Oh, the Gila. My ancestors walked into Arizona via the Gila River back in the 1870s. Back before invasive species made it so that nothing could grow along the Gila. I mean, nothing, so that there was no open space. That's the exact opposite. High Lonesome Books. Huh. What about making a bookmark cup? Stuff for Mike. Oh, that's so nice. That's my dad's handwriting. Save that forever. You know, it's dementia. Sweet and bitter, bitter and sweet. You know, it's crazy having a parent have dementia because, I don't know, you can't grieve them yet, you know? It's just this really slow motion death. We become the Ice King along the way. Right, this is a subject very much of interest to me. Sometimes these little niche books come along, and I'm like, I'm so glad that someone wrote that. I've always been interested in El Llano Estacado, the staked plain, this huge plain that's part of the Great Plains that's on the other side of the Sandias. It goes all the way to Texas and beyond, and beyond the border, and Texas. And what a beautiful name, El Llano Estacado. It sounds so nice. Here's a beautiful book. Feels cool. It's nice. I had an idea to make an indie record label back in the day that had all cardboard sleeves and like really cheap art that was stamped on, but it looked good. And I think it was gonna be CDs and vinyl, but and tapes probably, because I've always loved tapes. But I guess I do like that feeling, sensory thing. Maybe does it take me back to hitchhiking? What? What's crazy is the cardboard box replaced the barrel, the wooden barrel. That's a crazy leap in technology. Now no one even connects the two. Who loads a box and thinks of barrels? Destroy the competition with their ease, convenience, and minimal size. You don't need wood and metal staves and stuff. Anyway, the staked plain, possibly named that because my dad would send me all this stuff, but he was always right too. I was like, that is interesting. Thank you, Father. I'm sorry if I ever had a bad attitude about any of it. Sometimes I would joke about it, but one I regret is he sent me an article on podcasts really early on. He's like, you would do great at this if you started right away. Get into it. That's totally true. I should have done that. I don't think I actually did a podcast until over like a decade later. By then, the landscape was a different deal. Let's be the visionaries. But the stake plane is really interesting. They thought it was called that because the myth said that there were stakes put into it because it was so flat that it would show distance. But that's probably apocryphal. And it might mean something else. It might mean the quality of it. The staked planes, that could be a mining reference, That is a great cover. Come on, show them how it's done, boys. That is great. Girls. College Press, wow. Huh. But I'm interested in it because the wind that hits Albuquerque is cooled as it blows across it. Also, it's the wild desert that surrounds the city. Albuquerque is Oz, and I've thought of filming an adaptation of Oz using Albuquerque. Modern day, it'd be funny. Kind of more inspired by it than a direct adaptation. But Dorothy has to get across the city. That would be insane, to get to the highest peak of the Sandia Mountains. But if Albuquerque was Oz, this would be the deadly desert beyond that surrounds the place. But yeah, I snatched this book up when I saw it. I think at a library sale, I want to say. No, I bought it on the road with Cottonwood Gulch, I think. I really don't remember. That's scary. When your dad has dementia, it makes stuff like that scary. Like, why can't I remember this simple thing? Anyway, this is very interesting. I have this, and I have it in the New Mexico section because it has a chapter or two on Placitas and the communes there. I'm so interested in the Placitas communes. Last summer, I stayed at the Taos commune, New Buffalo, that inspired Easy Rider. As part of this camp I worked at. It was so cool. We were guests there. Worked in the fields around it for our stay. Hung out in the Kiva with this like big central living room area with the New Buffalo. I saw the library. I documented the library. It was crazy. I thought that place was awesome. And the people living there were cool. There's this amazing artist doing great abstract work back there. And it's just canvases are all sitting there. Joe something, what was his name? Amazing. I told him I'd go back and do an article on it, and I should. As soon as I get my car in good condition, I will. That might be a minute. But the Placitas communes are really interesting. The Taos communes were the number one in the country in New Mexico. See, even though we're talking New Mexico, this was a big national topic, and people in Europe were talking about it as well. American culture and European culture especially were influencing each other back and forth. Like pretty much every continent had its psychedelic scene. If Antarctica did. But this one's an artifact too. Unlike that other one, I don't think it's going to go in the case because it's just so New Mexico. It's so cool. Look at it. I love old books. Means USA. I love artifact books too. Like, wow, this is like something people read this to like decide to go out and join a commune, a personal tour. I respect it. I love reading about 1860s Russia, 1960s America, and everyone grew up and became rich. and or died or whatever. Okay. New Mexico, a wanderer's guide. Oh, Route 66 across New Mexico. Yeah, Route 66. People in New Mexico love Route 66, and that's a topic that's of much wider interest. Route 66 was really the first road across America. There were others, just exceptions. And the Highway 1 exists on both coasts. But Route 66 went from Chicago to Santa Monica, California, and that was a lot of the country that people hadn't seen before. Like, I've looked at a book before about early automotive pioneers, people that drove across the country back when it was just ragged dirt roads, and not every place was connected, really. And that was kind of interesting. I remember looking at that book. So Route 66 really changed everything. And it was a victim of its own success. It was so popular, it became a traffic-ridden nightmare by its end. Led to the freeways, which changed everything. Route 66 used the main streets of all the places it passed through, and it brought tourism and life to all these places. These little bean farming towns, suddenly the family could make pies and sell gas, and it was like, you can make a living now. It was an economic lifeline that ran through these cities and rejuvenated them and led to some great, great, great neon. I love the neon of Route 66. He was middle-aged, to quote Hayden. Is that what being middle-aged means? You get to a place where you appreciate Route 66. But it was, a good neon's always cool. This is a strange fellow. I think this one has like a fake character made up telling about it. That's funny. 'Tis a hybrid work. Even Press likes those, actually. Like Gerald Wiesner's books. They also reprint book about death in Wisconsin. What's that thing called? You're breathing quite heavily, Prismo. Do we need to put you on a diet? Get you a treadmill? Maybe a leash even? That sounds funny. I don't know. I wish cats could just all go outside. I'm worried about you getting hit by cars around here. Attacked by a dog. No, you'd probably escape a dog. What was that book called about that? It's like Fate of Air. Wisconsin Death Trip. Where's that thing? This is a pretty cool artifact to have. Communes USA. I can't get over it, kind of. Oh, yeah. Communes. I love this book I read. Josiah Warren, First American Anarchist. This guy in the 1700s doing experimental living communes. Why don't we all just get along and respect each other? But I'm probably more of a communist than an anarchist. But I'm a communist sympathizer because I'm more of an artist than anything. I'm not going to go out and start the revolution. That's not my gig, man. I'm all about understanding who we are, putting it down on paper. But without the ironic voice. Recent growth of communes. See, this is hot off the presses. This edition is 1972. 71. Love it. We're looking at this, and this is also cool. And this has, I've got these Route 66 books because I love the Sandias history too, and I wrote that book. And some of these Route 66 books have really good Sandia stretch information on them. In fact, Route 66 is like this ribbon of making people care about these random stretches because Route 66 historians are wild. One time, my friends and I were out driving Lamadera Road, and suddenly this truck appeared out of nowhere, and this guy goes, "I'm from the Smithsonian Institute, and I'm here documenting the original turn of Route 66. It's right over there on that hill." And he pointed out to this area that didn't look paved at all. It was just a notch in the rocky ridge above us. He's all, "That was the original route of Route 66 before Arthur Hannett lost the gubernatorial election and became a lame duck, and to punish the people in Santa Fe, he rerouted Route 66 to Albuquerque. But this was the original route. I'm documenting it. We're doing this big display at the Smithsonian. He gave us bookmarks and stuff that were promoting it." I was like, yeah. We've all heard the Arthur Hannett story. Tell us something we don't know. Sent him on his way. No, I'm just kidding. Though I had heard that story before. But I hadn't known about that notch, so that was pretty cool. Spell of New Mexico. So this is probably kind of like about the vibe of the place, the feeling. Oh, look at that. Bookmark for my brother Rob's original 11 Thumps book. That's cool. What's it doing in there? Probably means this book was owned by my dad at some point. When my dad got dementia and moved into a nursing home and had to eventually sell his condo, I got some books. Not as many as I thought. But, because he was always a book buyer. He always liked books. Was a really eclectic person. Still is. He's just not himself anymore. He's a melting ice cube of his former self. He's whittling down from a novel or series of novels into a GIF. The Spell in New Mexico. I think Tony Hillerman, he kept his intellect till toward the end because I knew him in the last few years of his life. So it doesn't come for all of us. He lived in Albuquerque and had poker play games with all the writers in town, I've heard. I never got invited, but I did hang out with him like 3 times. First, he came to my book signing. I had an event for my book, Towns of the Sandia Mountains. And he gave me a signed copy of his book, The Sinister Pig, which, you know, it didn't survive the purge. That's so crazy. I'm like, I just don't want to collect hardcover, I don't know, novels like that. Yeah, I think I gave it away to someone who was like a Tony Hillerman superfan during the purge. But it was funny. He went to give me a book to sign, and it was already signed because he had signed it for the store. So he's like, well, there's my name. And he kind of signed it again next to it and wrote something. No, I think he just wrote something above where he'd already signed. That's funny. But this might be like a collection of columns or articles that he wrote. I bet it is. Oh, look at profiles. What? This might be a resource I did not know I had. There's a chapter, by Conrad Richter, not on it. Oh, this is an anthology. Hey, it's a New Mexico anthology. I didn't know. Mary Austin, love her writing. Tony Hillerman is a good writer, too. I listened to his memoir, and it had some good advice in it that I still remember for writing. He said, anytime I use the word seems to, I think, how could I more specifically describe that? Why does it seem like that? Oliver Lafarge, she was a Santa Fe author. I wrote an article once on literary Santa Fe for the Santa Fe Reporter. It was meant to like make all these literary connections for me, and somehow it involved me burning bridges with like everybody in the state because nobody was happy with how much I discussed them in the article. They all were under the impression given to them only by their own egos that they would be more prominent in the article. How can you be super prominent in an article in a alt-weekly magazine if I'm interviewing 50 people or something, you know? It's about the scene. But I felt like I burned bridges with a ton of famous people. During that time, I went to these literary parties at Forrest Fenn's house in Santa Fe a couple times. My press pass was like my key to the kingdom. I met all these famous people. Like I met David Morrell, the guy who wrote the Rambo books. That's crazy. I met kind of famous actors that played people in Tony Hillerman's movie adaptations that were there. Like people who played Lee Porninchi in some PBS adaptations of Tony Hillerman's Western detective novels. Oh, I see my phone might die. I should plug it in. But this is long already. Yeah, this is a 37-minute video. But yeah, I hung out with Tony Hillerman at these Forrest Fenn parties. Forrest Fenn later became very famous nationally when he hid a treasure, a $3 million gold treasure, allegedly, somewhere in the West, and wrote a poem in his memoir that you were supposed to study. That was a whole chapter. But I came to feel like this rich man's toying with the poors because my friend and I almost drowned trying to find that thing. I think we knew where it was, and I feel like it was dishonestly moved or something like that. Like there was a line in his poem, "Not far down from the home of Brown." He said it was within an hour drive of his home in Santa Fe. I think it was in the Santa Fe, in the Jemez, in Soda Dam. This really like this accretion of sediment, like travertine, that's built up into this like nightmarish, weird pile of sediment with a waterfall cutting through it in the river. But my friend Ty and I found these 1940s archaeology magazines that say that when that site was originally found, that they found it was hollow and was full of artifacts like blankets and pots, and that those were removed to another location. But that meant that that empty space was still there, and some collector like Fenn would have known obscure articles like that. He was really obsessive. In his early days, he was accused of like being a grave robber. That's Forrest Fenn, not Tony Hillerman. Tony Hillerman seems to have been a stand-up guy forever. He was in World War II. His memoir, Seldom Disappointed, is pretty good. I really enjoyed that. I listened to him read it on the audiobook. He's criticized for like being a white man writing native characters, but it's like, to me, it seems very loving. And, you know, native actors play the characters in adaptations, and I don't know. I think it's polarizing. I've seen Facebookers that really hate Tony Hillerman. But there's a library named after him now. He was always active in the community. He was a really cool guy. I enjoyed all my interactions with him. We had mutual friends, weirdly, like Jim Fisher, my old boss at the Lobo. But yeah, he's kind of like the New Mexico guy. He used to write articles for New Mexico Magazine all the time, too. Here's an interesting one. Zuni Cultural Symbolism and Perceptions of Rock Art, Signs from the Ancestors. It's kind of about graffiti, basically, like, but rock art. expression through image. But back in the day, love it. I'm glad I own this. I pair this one with this other book on Apache depictions of the white man image, this very specific symbol that represents white people in Apache rock art. That should be with this one. Maybe it's further down in the shelf or it got moved around or something. And Roadside History of New Mexico. This is the last one I got out from the shelf, so we made it before the battery died. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. This is a useful one. I used to travel everywhere with this one because it has waypoints along every major highway in the state, basically. And even like every county. So that's awesome. And this and Robert Julian's